Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. We're going to have an interesting conversation today. Lots to talk about. We'll talk about the suggestion that maybe Wisconsin should do away with same-day voter registration. That has people in an uproar. We'll talk about the troubling video we've all seen of the Milwaukee police officer hitting the combative woman in the back seat of a squad car. Should he be fired for that? We will discuss whether a judge should be allowed to order somebody not to have any more children. And we'll talk about the exit of Wisconsin Badger football coach Coach Bielema. All right, let me introduce everybody again. We have longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally, Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Radio. You know Denise Callaway, the community affairs and public relations professional. And of course, Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz is going to be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about is the Wisconsin law that allows you to register to vote at the poll on Election Day. A few weeks ago, Governor Walker said maybe we should revisit that law because it creates long lines and too many headaches for the elderly poll workers trying to keep up with everything. A couple of Republican lawmakers are reportedly working on a proposal to do away with same-day registration. Now, this has folks on the left saying this is nothing more than an attempt to stop young, often minority Democrats from voting. Kevin, do you think it is?
No, it's not. And I mean that sincerely. It truly is an attempt to preserve the integrity of the ballot in the election system and keep our elections clean and honest. I've seen it just this last election. I saw it at my polling place where the lines were out the door, and God love those clerks. They won't admit it, but this makes it tough for them. They have it tough on a normal election day when it's not pandemonium in there. And to suggest that, oh, there's no fraud or any problems associated with same-day registration, I think is being rather naive. I think the governor, though, is correct in his view, his philosophy that, look, in the great scheme of things, we've got bigger fish to fry. We need to rejuvenate the state's economy. We need to get more people back to work, and that should be the priority. You're not going to stop the legislature from legislating and formulating bills and sending them around for co-sponsorship and so forth, but the number one priority must be job creation, and you're going to have all of these other myriads of bills. You're going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Even state cupcake might come up, but you can't keep. You got to keep your eyes on the prize. And I think the governor is right that job creation has to be number one, and you can't be having all these other distractions.
Denise, any big deal to ask people to register to vote a few weeks in advance?
Yeah, it's a big deal. And, you know, I'm concerned that the legislature is going to be doing exactly what it did in the last session when the governor said jobs are priority number one, and we found 5,000 other things the legislature decided to discuss because there were some legislators who felt that these issues are more important, and we never got around to doing the work that needed to be done around job creation. And that seems like exactly the same place we're headed this year. And so that, to me, is the major issue that we're dealing with, that there are some clear issues that we have to be addressing in the state. We have legislators who are already distracted by these other things that, quite frankly, are not, they're non-issues. Once again, this legislature seems to be able to concentrate to the absolute best of its ability to take a look at things that are non-issues and move them to the forefront. This same-day registration is not a problem. I live in a ward. I have a ward. The ward that I vote in probably has one of the highest levels of same-day registration as any ward in the city of Milwaukee. And my poll workers, I'm not going to guess their age. That would be inappropriate for me to do. But they don't have a problem taking care of the work that needs to be done. People are not standing in long lines. And most importantly, people who have every right to vote but who haven't, for whatever reason, had the opportunity to register before Election Day are able to exercise that right.
Why haven't they?
Well, there can be all kinds of reasons why people don't have the opportunity to vote.
3 weeks before.
Well, you know, part of the reason is we have people who are working, in some cases, multiple jobs where the hours they work are the same hours that they would have to go to register. There are all kinds of reasons. I think as a country and as a state, when we have not, you know, we always hear, oh, it's a chance for fraud to happen. But the reality of it is it doesn't happen. We have a handful of cases of documented, real voter fraud in this state. Let's not try to create these false issues around this is a way to protect voter fraud. It's a way to make sure that elderly ladies don't get stressed out. Call it what it is. We know that people who tend to register on Election Day tend to be people of color, younger, and oh, by the way, they tend to vote Democratic. That's what this is a way to do. You would find 20% of the people who voted in this last election would not have been able to vote if we would have had that. And that's
one quick question for Denise. She said that people don't have the opportunity to go register 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks because they just don't have the time. But yet they have time on Election Day to go and register and create long lines and wait an hour or two.
In this state,
they suddenly have time on Election Day.
Kevin, let me answer you. In this state, we have a law that requires people to get time off on Election Day to vote. That's why that happens.
But the majority of states do not allow same-day registration.
42 do not.
So to do away with it is not like an outrageous idea, is it?
No, and it hasn't been in place since the state's constitution. I don't have a problem with same-day voter registration. I think that this is a matter of timing. Those legislators that want to bring it up, certainly bringing it up after the election when you had an overwhelming number of same-day voters registering to vote on Election Day, leaves more than a lot of folks with the notion that it's disingenuous to propose it at this time. I personally, if they were going to propose it, they should have proposed it at the same day, that at the same time that voter ID was proposed in the legislature and passed. And I think that less concern would exist among those who support voter ID if that had been coupled with it. That being said, it's not a high priority. It shouldn't be a high priority because the state does have far too many other pressing problems, and I don't think they're going to get a lot of folks to sign on to this. I don't think it's going to pass.
You got to let me speak.
All right.
First of all, I just wish a Republican would want to tell the truth on this show. I really do. You came as close as you've come lately by saying disingenuous. I'm waiting for honest Republicans to stand up and tell the truth. It is so obvious. First of all, you passed the voter ID law. It's been found to be unconstitutional, so you didn't get to go with that. So because that's unconstitutional, now you're against same-day voter registration. The claim was you had to have a voter ID because fraud could happen. Well, voter registration, you have to have an ID to register. And you have to register. And you know what the best part to me about same-day voter registration is? People show up at the polls all the time and find out their names aren't on the voter list for some reason. It's some bureaucratic screw up. We know this stuff happens in government. And the wonderful thing about living in Wisconsin, when you find out someone else has removed your right to vote and it was some mess up, all you have to do is register at the polls and vote. 60,000 people turned out in Milwaukee to register on Election Day to vote. You know, that was an 87% turnout, which was absolutely fantastic. But you know where the turnout was even higher, and there's always enormous same-day registration? It's not Democratic Milwaukee, it is Republican Waukesha, where it was 89% turnout. And this is so dishonest. The only reason Scott Walker then said it wasn't a priority after going to California and announcing he was going to do it was because people stood up, Democrats stood up here and said this is outrageous, and I'm still waiting for an honest Republican to stand up and say that.
All right, next topic. Now let's talk about the video we've all seen of the Milwaukee police officer punching the screaming woman in the back seat of his squad car and then dragging her out by her hair. The chief fired him. Recently, the Milwaukee Police and Fire Commission voted to reinstate him. Now, after politicians complained and protesters disrupted a commission meeting this week, the commissioners say next week they're going to revisit their decision and maybe vote on it again. Is that fair, or is it bowing to public pressure?
I don't think it's bowing to public pressure. I'm surprised that the commissioners, even after many hours of deliberation, didn't see what most common sense citizens saw in that tape, and that was an excessive use of force by a police officer that was rightly fired. The irony is that the police chief may have restored some of his credibility in having fired him in the first place, and the Police and Fire Commission, which is the citizens' body that citizens should be able to go to and voice their opinions about the operations of the police and fire department. Somewhere there was a breakdown in that communication, and now they're trying to restore their own credibility by rethinking what they did with that reinstatement.
Denise, the officer's lawyer said, oh, okay, the public is making their decision based on the 10, 15 seconds of video. They didn't see the whole video and they don't have the whole story.
What? That's an interesting argument. I suppose that's one way to think of it. But what could have transpired? What could have transpired in the 15 minutes before that when you have a woman who is handcuffed in the back of a vehicle, and you decide that to do whatever, to keep her quiet, to make her stop yelling, you're going to punch her? This is a woman who was restrained. It's not as if this officer needed to use force because she wasn't restrained. She was threatening him in some way because she wasn't handcuffed. She was a handcuffed woman in the back of a police squad. I can't think of anything that could have happened before then that gives this man, who's a sworn officer, sworn to uphold the law, to protect and to serve, to decide that he was going to get into the back of the squad car and punch her.
We created this commission because people didn't like it when the chief made decisions on whether people should be hired or fired. So they created this citizen commission. Would it be better to go back to the police chief making decisions?
Absolutely not. I think having a civilian review board is excellent. And I think Michael Tobin, the new chairman of the fire, not chairman, but the administrative guy, it has done a lot to add more credibility to the Fire and Police Commission as far as, no longer do the police themselves investigate themselves, but there are some outside investigators, and he's tried to make it more open to the public. One of the so I definitely believe in a civilian review board. I do think that the police chief has a right to run his department and fire people, that he finds cause to fire, and the only reason to overturn that would be if it was some kind of an egregious move by a police chief that all of us could look at and agree, that was outrageous some way that this officer got fired. I don't think very many people would look at this case. At the same time, I have a little bit of a problem because I know several people on that commission, one who voted against and one who voted for, and I never saw a good explanation for why the two who voted to reinstate the officer, they're public meetings and they're public, this was a public action, but the reporting has been so bad that we don't really understand what's behind it. I think it does need to be revisited, and I certainly admire those people who showed up and demanded to have a voice at that meeting. I don't think it's caving to the public at all. I think you want the public involved and to have some faith that the right things are going to be done as far as correcting some of the actions that we know have gone way too far in this community by the police department.
Kevin, I'm not a cop, but this lady's in the back of the car. She's screaming, spitting. Let's say you're the officer. You're afraid she might bite you. How do you get her out of the car?
Well, you don't punch her in the face. She's defenseless and restrained, and you don't drag her out by her hair. And I'm not a police officer either. But they are trained in how to deal with situations like that. And I know police officers, and I don't think any one of those officers that I know would have acted in this manner. True, you have a suspect who is fighting back and may spit on you, and I understand all that. But I think the officer went too far in this case. And the argument that the decision was based on 10 or 15 seconds of video, well, how long does the excessive force have to go? 45 seconds, 60 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes? I too wonder why it took so long for the proper decision to be to be made. And I agree with Joel that there should be I think we all agree that there should be a citizen review panel, that there should be a fire and police commission that does handle citizen complaints. However, I have stated in the past, and I still hold to this view, that I wish that the commission members had more expertise in police management, in how an officer is to conduct himself in just law enforcement. I think you don't have that kind of experience.
Well, and the one individual who does have that experience, who sits on the panel, is the commissioner who voted to uphold the firing of this gentleman.
All right, next topic. Okay, so this 44-year-old guy was in a Racine courtroom the other day. He'd fallen tens of thousands of dollars behind in child support payments due. By the way, he has 9 kids from 6 different women. So the judge orders him not to have any more kids unless he can afford them. Should a court be able to determine whether or not any human being can procreate?
No, absolutely not. And I cannot believe any conservatives who sometimes fight to take away the right of a woman to decide whether to have a child would support the right of a court to say whether someone should have a child or not and take that right away from the individual. No, there are areas you're not, the law is not entitled to enter into, and this is one of them.
So should he be able to have 4 more kids and not pay for them?
Well, there are 2 different areas there. One is his right to procreate. I believe that's absolute, just as I would believe that a woman's right to procreate is absolute. The other is
or not procreate.
Or not procreate. Well, do you take care of them? And when that issue comes before the court, I think the court already has appropriate remedies for that. If you don't make your child support payments, you spend time in jail. That's known. I do think the judge went way too far in his ruling to insist that the guy be held accountable for not being able to procreate in the future. That, to me, that's just nonsense.
Denise, I heard somebody say the other day, too bad they couldn't castrate the guy.
Well, again, the law doesn't really allow us to do that either.
We have to draw the line.
Yeah, we do have to draw the line. It's a question of the only issue before the judge should be whether or not this man who's been paying his child support, if he hasn't been paying the child support, then he needs to suffer the consequences. If that means that he goes to jail because he's not held up that obligation to his children, not to the state, but to his children, then that's what the judge should do. But the judge does not have any right to say to this guy, don't go out and have any more kids, any more than someone would have the right to say we ought to castrate him. People make bad decisions. They need to be held accountable for those bad decisions that they make. Having 9 kids, maybe that's a good decision, but it's not a good decision if you can't take care of them and you can't pay the child support for them.
Kevin, some people think it was a very, very common sense order that the judge handed down.
I do, actually.
You know, and should a judge be allowed to do that? And maybe should people be allowed to do that even in non-criminal cases? If you're on welfare and you have 12 kids, should you be able to have 5 more?
Well, in today's society, you can have 5 more, even though it's just not the right, proper thing to do. And I wish, I'm sorry, I can't remember if it was the Journal-Sentinel or another paper here in southeastern Wisconsin that wrote that a state Supreme Court decision made about 10 years ago gives judges the authority to do what this judge did in this case. I think you had a frustrated judge who would have liked to have done more, but you can't legislate or judge from the bench the ability to be a good father. And I look at it from the perspective of the kids. He's had, 9 kids with 6 different women. All right, obviously he's morally bankrupt. But the kids, they deserve better than this. They deserve a father, not a sperm donor.
You know, my maternal grandparents had 10 children, either a couple of years just before the Depression or during the Depression. And they took care of all those kids. In fact, they had music lessons, and we thought of ourselves as poor. My grandfather bought a home during the Depression, which up until a couple of years ago was still in our family. No one would ever, during that time, say that you had to have limits on the number of children that you could have, or that if you couldn't take care of them, that anything other than maybe having those children taken and living with another family member who could take care of them or put up for adoption, no one would ever say you need to castrate them or you need to deny them the opportunity to have more children.
We're outraged when China makes such a law.
Right.
All right, we got to take a few minutes to talk about Badger coach Brett Bielema leaving to go to Arkansas. Okay,
Get rid of the bum.
Guy's going to make like up to $4 million a year if he meets all these incentives.
Yeah.
Can you really be? Do we have any right to really be mad at the guy for?
Little goody two-shoes has to show up.
Tasteless, classless way to do what he did. It was rotten. It was not befitting of Badger Nation. To not have, first of all,
Denise, for one.
for Arkansas not to even approach Barry Alvarez to say, hey, we'd like to talk to the guy. For Bielema to not even say to Alvarez, I just need to let you know, give you the heads up here. And instead to say, I got to talk to you in a big hurry. And then for Alvarez to guess, he said, you're not telling me you're thinking about taking the job. You're telling me you've taken it. To take it right before his kids are getting ready to go to the Rose Bowl. I mean, it's a very, maybe I'm a little Pollyannish about this, but it was a very
That'll be the day.
Selfish. It was a very, I think, selfish thing to do. If Arkansas wanted him that bad, that job would have been his if he would have waited.
That's what you tell the Suey Hogs down there. You tell them, look, I just won the Big Ten championship. I'm going to the Rose Bowl. Let's talk after January 1. And I understand he wanted the money and all that, but here's a guy who, during his entire coaching career with Wisconsin, trashed the Southeastern Conference, made fun of them, ridiculed them, and what cojones to say, hey, I'm taking this job in Arkansas, but can I hang around for the next month and coach? And I don't know that anybody, I haven't heard from Joel yet, but I haven't heard from anybody that is defending the guy. They don't like the way he behaved on the sidelines and got penalties because of his actions and cost the Badgers games. He's lost close games. He's not won a Rose Bowl. Yeah, he's taken them to 3 in a row, but he hasn't won, and he might have cost us a chance at a national championship.
But against Nebraska, that huge win, he was at the point where he could command top dollar, I'm sure, and it was either like now or lose another Rose Bowl and maybe bump down $1 million.
And why should we be surprised when we throw millions of dollars at football coaches that they go after millions of dollars? I mean, I'm not surprised. I actually think this has turned out terrific for those kids going to the Rose Bowl to be coached by Barry Alvarez.
That's the best part about it.
That is going to be the time of their lives, something they'll remember
and
all
they might
their
actually
lives.
win this one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know that ever since Barry Alvarez has been out of coaching, every UW game he, in his mind, has been coaching that game. So I think we're looking forward to it.
He didn't look angry, really. Do you think he was really that super surprised?
I think he was hurt. Because if you remember how Bielema got the job in the first place, there was no competition for him. Barry gave him his good seal of approval, said that he would mentor him in his first couple years, that this was a real winner. This guy would take the team to a national championship.
Never happened.
The communication breakdown happened, I think, after this last effort to win the Rose Bowl didn't happen. If rumors are correct that Bielema approached Arkansas and others back in September, he knew that he was on his way out, and he did do what was in his personal best interest, and that's make that decision against the rules.
No one begrudges him taking the money, correct? No one does that.
Money, it's all about the money for him, obviously.
Right.
Obviously, money talks. And now we know what walks.
Money talks. Well, the bowl games aren't the only big contest coming up at the end of the year. The political world is looking at a major battle, too. But just like in football, some political games also have a little bit of hype attached. And here to sort it all out is Rick Horowitz. Rick.
Everybody says, whoa. Everybody says, don't even go there. Me? I'm not so sure. They don't want to hear it. My friends, they say, Cliffy, cool down. Cliffy, back off. That's my name, Cliff. Fiscal Cliff. You probably heard of me. Well, not bragging, I'm just saying. You turn on the TV, they're talking about me. your newspaper, your, what you call it, iPad, same thing. Stay clear of Fiscal Cliff, they're saying. Don't mess with Fiscal Cliff. Right. 2 things you ought to know about me. First thing, it wasn't my idea to get involved in this whole Washington fight that's going on. They're the ones dragged me into it. Let's put Fiscal Cliff right in the middle of the negotiations. That was some genius said that, like they didn't have enough to worry about. So let's make it even worse, they said. Let's put some catastrophe out there if we don't get it all decided by some deadline. Smart, right? Like I said, it wasn't my idea. That's the first thing. Second thing, I'm not as big a problem as they think I am. I mean, you hear Fiscal Cliff, right away you're thinking huge trouble. I get that. But just between us, I'm not such a tough guy. I mean it. You can tangle with Fiscal Cliff and still come out alive, really, even if you go over the edge. And some people, they've figured that out. There'll be some bumps and some bruises, they figure, but that's it. You patch them up, you keep going, which is why they're okay with it. Better than okay. They're perfectly happy to go over the edge of cliff, at least for a little while. That's what they're saying anyway. Sure, maybe they're bluffing. You never know though, do you? It's like my cousin Claudette always says, you want to find out if it's a bluff? You might find out it's not. You know Claudette, right? Claudette Sealing. You know, she's the one you don't want to mess with. But me, leave me out of it.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Stay warm. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.